So in the last Snare Saturday video, I compared a Ludwig Copperphonic to a Ludwig chrome over brass snare drum. Both a 5x14 snare drum and both modern day drums from Ludwig. Well, in this Snare Saturday video, I'm going to compare that Copperphonic to one of the most sought after snare drums. What's going on, everybody? Nick Costa here, and in this video I'm going to be comparing the Ludwig Copperphonic 5x14 LC660 snare drum to a late 60s Ludwig Supraphonic LM400 snare drum. This is going to give you that opportunity to hear a modern day unique snare drum against something that is heavily sought after because of how amazing it sounds. Now, before we dive into this video, make sure you hit that subscribe button as well as the bell notification. That way you're notified of any additional content that I upload to the channel. Now, both of these drums have been featured in different Snare Saturday videos. The first one is a late 60s Ludwig Supraphonic, also known as the LM400, which is one of the most sought after drums because it is a late 60s vintage drum, and of course it's a Supraphonic. By the way, I am saying Supra, S-U-P-R-A, not S-U-P-E-R. I know a lot of people think I'm saying Supraphonic. You're just hearing my Philly accent. Now that that's out of the way, the other drum is a Ludwig Copperphonic. This is a 5x14 LC660 snare drum. Now this is a modern day Ludwig snare drum. So let's talk about the specs of both drums, starting out with the late 60s LM400 Supraphonic. This is a 5 depth by 14 inch diameter chrome over aluminum snare drum. It has 10 double-sided imperial lugs, triple flange hoops on the top and the bottom, and if it is the late 60s, it should be 1.9 millimeters in thickness for the hoops, and Ludwig's P83 throw-off. Now this drum in particular is outfitted with a Remo Ambassador X coated on the top and a Remo snare side on the bottom. Snare wires are a set of Canopus vintage wires. Now, for the Copperphonic LC660 snare drum, it is a 5x14 1.2 millimeter seamless copper shell. This drum also has 10 double-sided imperial lugs, but since it is a modern day Ludwig snare drum, it has rubber gaskets behind each lug. This drum is also outfitted with triple flange hoops, but again, since it is a modern day drum, they are 2.3 millimeters in thickness. Finally, this drum is outfitted with Ludwig's P88 AC throw-off. Now for the heads on this drum, once again, to try and get them to be comparable to the ones on the vintage Supraphonic, I have a Remo Ambassador X coated on the top and an Ambassador snare side on the bottom. Snare wires on this drum are the generic Ludwig snare wires that come with every modern day Ludwig snare. So in this video, you have two snare drums, a modern day one that is supposed to be a little bit drier and darker in tone, and the other one being that classic sound that everybody wants. So it's higher in overtones and has a little bit of a longer sustain because it's aluminum. Now before we go any further in this video, I wanted to take a moment to give you all a quick update on the Ludwig 6.5x14 chrome over brass snare giveaway from shop.nickcostamusic.com. I just received word that we officially have a winner. So that means that one of you is about to get a phone call from me letting you know that you won this drum, along with brand new heads from Remo, additional snare wires from Pure Sound, and a Ludwig 6.5x14 black snare drum case. So make sure you are following me on Instagram at PracticallyNick. I will be making a post to let you all know when you should be by your phone, because one of you is about to get a phone call from me letting you know that you won. So just like every other Snare Saturday video, I'm going to play each drum through a few different tunings. I'm going to start out in a low tuning and work my way up to a higher tuning. Now, in each tuning, I will play each drum back to back. And as the saying goes, age before beauty. So I will start out with the Supraphonic LM400 and then transition over to the modern day Copperphonic. Now, since the modern day Copperphonic does not have an internal dampener like the vintage Supraphonic does, I will not be engaging or disengaging that muffler. I'll just keep it off the entire time. That way you can hear each drum as wide open as possible with the current head configuration. So, enough of me talking, let's dive into playing. Now, the one thing I want to point out, just like other videos where I'm comparing an aluminum drum to a different species like chrome over brass, or say Copperphonic, what I've noticed is that if I do a half turn on the Copperphonic, I can do a quarter turn on the Supraphonic and get a similar pitch for that top head. If I did a half turn on each drum, the Supraphonic is a whole lot higher in pitch, most likely because it's an aluminum shell that is chrome plated. Another thing is that when I was going for the lowest tuning, once I got the Supraphonic to a pitch that actually sounded like a pitch and not a dead drum, it was substantially higher than the Copperphonic. So if you are somebody who prefers a snare drum to be lower in pitch, maybe even a little bit more dead, you're going to be able to do that with the Copperphonic without having to use any type of thicker drum heads, moon gels, or even putting a big fat snare drum on top of it. But most definitely you would have to do that with the Supraphonic to get the same pitch. Now, the other interesting thing is that when I was getting into those higher tunings, those overtones from the Supraphonic were starting to stick out a whole lot more and make the drum sound a little bit brighter. Because again, we're dealing with a chrome over aluminum shell versus a copper shell. So that meant that I had to make some minor adjustments to the tunings to try and get the drums to sound the same when I play them the same exact way. But either way, I would love to get your feedback and what you thought of each drum, so make sure that you leave it in the comment section below, letting me know. Also, if you want to see the earlier Snare Saturday videos where I am showing each drum individually, I put links in the description below. And if you enjoyed this video and want to see some of the earlier videos from the Snare Saturday series, I will also put that link in the description below. I'll also have it pop up right here to make it a bit easier for you. So if you have any questions on either drum, or maybe how I tune the drums, maybe even the gear that I am using in this video, feel free to leave that in the comment section as well, and I will try my best to answer them. Finally, if you enjoyed this video, please make sure that you give it a thumbs up. That way it makes it a little bit easier for others to find it. And that is it. Thank you so much for checking out this video on comparing the Ludwig Copperphonic 5x14 LC660 snare drum to a late 60s Ludwig Supraphonic LM400 snare drum. And until next time, see you later.